My name is Paolo Martelli. I'm professor at Parma University, Italy. My presentation is based on two different parts. In the first part, I want to show the pathogenesis of APP, just to introduce what will be shown in the second part. The second part is aimed at showing the result of a field trial based on the use of coglepics in fatness in the prevention of pleural pneumonia.
So, good evening, everybody. I'm very pleased and honored to be here this evening to give my view about Actinobacillus pleuropneumonia, but in particular to show you experimental data with vaccination. And I'm pleased, and I want to thank the organizer of this interesting meeting for the invitation, and in particular Roman for so kind introduction. Okay, I will take 20 minutes more or less on my presentation. So the content of my presentation is a brief introduction about Actinobacillus pleuropneumonia. Okay, I will try to summarize some important aspects about APP, and then the outcome of a field trial, focusing obviously on the result and on the return on investment on that. Very simple, okay? Okay, we start with the first part, APP. APP or AP, it depends, okay? As the causative agent of pleuropneumonia in pigs, you know that we have different geographic distribution, okay? Different continents, different serotype, two different biotypes of this microorganism. It's considered a late colonizer of the respiratory tract. It's important because the early weaning now is not applied anymore, early weaning, but I want to remind you that if we want to reduce the impact or the transmission from sow to the piglets of Actinobacillus pleuropneumonia, we have to reduce as much as possible the duration of lactation, because the transmission from sow to the newborn piglets occurs during lactation. And there is no correlation within the highly virulent strain can have less carrier animal in the same herd as compared to the low virulent strain. So we don't have a clear cut behavior of the microorganism based on the characteristic of its virulence, okay? Transmission and virulence. Okay, that's some remark about pathogenesis, okay? The first step is obviously colonization, you see. The first step of the infectious process. And after that, we have the inhalation of the microorganism, okay, by the aerosol, okay, and then the binding to the mucus of the lower respiratory tract, the colonization of this area, also of the upper respiratory tract, and the adherence to the bronchioli and the epithelial cell of the alveoli. So here you see this in a histological picture, okay? You see where the microorganism colonize, just in the very small bronchioli, in the epithelial cell of the alveoli, not in the epithelial cell of the airways, okay? I mean of the trachea or bronchi, okay? And the adherence is based on the presence of lipopolysaccharides in the membrane of the microorganism. But two different aspects of the respiratory tract are impaired by the microorganism. First, the ability of the mucociliary function to the clearance. Okay, you know, it's very well known. There is the mucociliary effect that clear the microorganism or whatever is recognized non-self in the respiratory tract. And the second mechanism of defense mechanism is phagocytosis, okay? And the mucociliary function as well as the phagocytosis are impaired by Actinobacillus pleuropneumonia. The first, the mucociliary function is impaired, okay, also by other. I want to remind you that other infection, in particular Mycoplasma pneumonia, colonize these same function, and then also Ojeski disease and swine influenza virus colonize, or in this case, replicates on those cells. And the phagocytosis in the by the alveolar macrophages is impaired by the very well-known APX toxin of the microorganism. Okay? So we have the adherence to the deeper part of the lung and the action of the toxin, APX toxins. Okay, so the combination effect, the combined effect of the APX toxin and the lipopolysaccharides of the microorganism are responsible for the pathogenesis, for the effect, and the tissue damage. And you see here both the components, lipopolysaccharide and APX toxin, are responsible for the consolidation of the pulmonary airways and the vasodilation and the very well-known pathological lesion of necrotic hemorrhagic pneumonia, typical of APP. But one very important aspect dealing with APP is the persistence of the microorganism. The persistence of the microorganism mainly in the necrotic lung tissue, as you see here, this is a site of persistence. But in this site of persistence, the microorganism is able to change a little bit its characteristics. It can grow and persist also with very low level of oxygen. It means within abscesses. And so the adaptation of the microorganism to anaerobicity. Okay, so it's a respiratory microorganism. At a certain point, it changes its ability and starts to persist and grow and to persist, okay, in anaerobioses. But importantly, I want to remind you that in the site of persistence, the microorganism persists within the biofilm. You know that biofilm is now very important, okay? Biofilm is now a subject of a lot of study in human medicine also, and in particular because in the biofilms, the microorganism can colonize it, the biofilm can persist, but in particular, within the biofilm, the microorganism can evolve and acquire resistance to antimicrobial agent. That's the most important and the most interesting, from a scientific point of view, aspect connected with the biofilm. I want to remind you, make an example. Okay, the persistence of the microorganism in human being, for instance, streptococci, okay, Streptococcus hemolyticus in kids, okay, in the tonsils, and the persistence is based on the presence of biofilm there, okay. Anyway, the adaptation and persistence of the microorganism is able to allow it to survive for a long term, and in this way we have the persistence of the microorganism. So colonization, tissue damage, persistence. And the last point of this brief introduction is the disease, okay? Range from peracute to chronic. Okay, you very well known, and I want to remind you that mortality rate and the severity of the disease is related to the virulence of the strain, to the immune status of the host, and to the degree of the exposure, because it's also dose dependent. As expected, being a respiratory disease, the environment is always and very, very important. So the evolution of the disease, a proportion of pigs can clinically recover, and I want to remind you that we are speaking about pleural pneumonia, we are speaking about pneumonia, but also pleurisy, and this is the reason why we have a large number of pigs can develop a chronic disease, chronic pneumonia, and we have more severe lesion, okay, and the recovery of the chronic pleurisy takes a long time, 3-4 months, okay, but we will go back in the next slides. Okay, here you have a very, that's just for students, but I want to very well show you the different phases, clinical form of porcine pneumonia, peracute, acute, chronic, and subclinical disease also. But what I want to show you is the evolution from a pathological point of view. This is the typical pathological aspect of the lung with the acute from a pig died from the acute form of the disease. Then we have different area with firm, rubbery, dark, with obvious fibrinous pleuritis. It is very, very nice in this picture, if someone liked this kind of picture, okay. But and here pleurisy first, and then the evolution of the pleurisy, and the recovery from the pleurisy can take at least 3 months. So it can help when we think to the lung lesion. So now we move to the second part of my presentation. Sorry, thank you. The second part is based on the result of a field trial. Okay, carried out in Italy last year, obviously, in my department with the assistance of the research group, my research group, okay? And the early history is very interesting because this history was the famous, I think, yes, and for me, because it was the first farm in Italy that was eradicated Actinobacillus pleuropneumoniae. Yes, in 2011 was eliminated. Just the farmer decided to eliminate Actinobacillus pleuropneumoniae from the farm, applying very strict protocol based also on test and removal and medication and so on. And the farm was negative for 4 years until 2015. Okay. In 2015, unfortunately, some outbreaks in fatness occurred, and the diagnosis was confirmed by the laboratory investigation. Okay. When the farm was negative to Actinobacillus pleuropneumoniae, all the system for the monitoring of the situation was based on lung lesion, routinely lung lesion at check as slaughterhouse, just to evaluate the presence or not, fortunately not, pleural lesions suggestive of pleuropneumonia. And unfortunately, this accident occurred, and it was positive. That is the reason why we decided to run this trial. Okay, and at that point, 2,050 vaccinated and 2,050 unvaccinated, non-vaccinated control pigs were allocated to the two different groups. The two groups were housed in the same building, in the same pens. They were individually identified according to the group, but also according to the group. Okay, the piglets were vaccinated twice with the first vaccination at 7 weeks of age, and the second one, the booster vaccination, 3 weeks apart. And the preliminary serological tests were aimed at assessing the decline of maternally derived antibodies. So we decided to vaccinate at 7 weeks of age, just because the level of maternal derived antibody has disappeared or something like that. Okay. The vaccine was Coglepix from Ceva Santé Animal. And the control pig received injection with saline solution, and the criteria for the evaluation of the vaccine performance were those you can see here, obviously mortality, morbidity, and mortality due to API infection, and weight, the slaughterhouse lesion, and mainly the return on investment. So we try to calculate the cost, the advantages or disadvantages of the vaccination. We will see. First result is mortality as expected from a vaccine against APP, a good vaccine against APP, or a vaccine that can be named vaccine, right, with some protective activity, was based on the reduction of mortality in runt animal. And you see here that the mortality in the vaccinated group connected with the APP was reduced by 73%. Okay? The overall mortality was quite higher in this farm. You see the mortality for other reason was the number 10 and 8 in the control and vaccinated animal. Then during the outbreak, we had 19 that animal in the control and 7 in the vaccinating, and the other part, the violet part of the bar, as represent the number of runt pig. The distribution of mortality in respect to the pleuropneumonia outbreak, you see here. This is the duration of the outbreak, the calendar, okay? From the beginning of the middle of September to the middle of October, and you see here we have the mortality in the two different groups. In the orange one, the control, and the vaccinated, the blue one. And there is the individual antimicrobial treatment during the whole experimental period. You see from the vaccination to the to the slaughterhouse. And here you see highlighted the period corresponding to the outbreak of pleuropneumonia. Okay, the number of injection in the control group was 356 in 2050. In 250 pigs of the group, and the vaccinated 253 out of 220 to 250 pigs. Okay, so there are pigs that receive more than one injection, of course. But it will be shown later in the return on investment. We had no statistically significant differences in terms of weight gain in the two groups, in the control and in vaccinated. And also in lung lesion, we have some differences in the lesion connected to related, okay, just to be, I have to take care of that. Okay, the cranioventral consolidation, okay, related to mycoplasma lesion, it were less in APP vaccinated group, is not obviously is not a direct effect of the vaccination. But at the very end, we have tried to calculate the return on investment. We have the number of the pigs in the two groups of the beginning, the mortality, the pigs, the number of pigs as slaughterhouse, okay, the live weight at the start of the trial, at the vaccination, of course, and the live weight at the slaughter. The body weight increase during the whole period, okay? And the kg of produced in total in the two groups. The market price of the pig at that moment, okay, live weight in Italy, okay. I mean, you know that in Italy the price, the market price at slaughterhouse is the live weight of the pigs, okay, and it was 145 the weeks when we slaughtered the pigs. The difference is in value. The vaccination cost, of course, as expected, in the Actinobacillus vaccinated animal, we have a higher cost for vaccination, €2 roughly. The total cost of vaccination, and at the very end, the overall benefit and the cost for the medication, okay, for the injection differences in the injection, the mobility, and at the very end, the benefit for pig has been calculated to be around €20 per pig, okay? So we spent more just for the vaccination, okay, but the benefit from the vaccination was a reduction on the mortality, okay, but if we wanted to transfer these proportion of pigs that has survived a little bit, we can quantify in 21 euro per pig. Okay. And at the very end of my presentation, I want to remind you some point of my presentation. First, that Actinobacillus, pleuropneumonia, and pleuropneumonia are still a challenge, and the differences in pathogenicity and geographic distribution is still a huge interest. Vaccination is the most reliable tool to combat the disease, of course, okay? In particular, if we consider that the majority of the EU countries are trying to put in place or to implement the strategy for the reduction of the use of antibiotics. The second point, the improvement of the environmental condition can help for swine respiratory disease in general term and for APP also. So we want to remind that we have to take care of the welfare of the animal. Vaccination reduces mortality and morbidity and related costs. Okay, mortality, morbidity, it was calculated as the number of individual injection per pigs. Pleural lesion can be reduced or not. In our case, in this case, we didn't see any difference in terms of pleural lesion as slaughterhouse. Okay, but we can discuss about that. And at the very end, the condition of this trial, the return on investment was approximately 21 euro per slaughter pigs. And at the very end of my presentation, I want to thank you very much for your kind attention.